when I first got into the branding and marketing and lead generation and sales and product marketing industries, I didn't really have any interest in becoming a marketer or even being in the marketing industry because I didn't really care about any of that stuff. And it was at a time in society where popularity of product was really, really becoming important. And it's not something that I'd grown up with, and I didn't really care. But I needed to make a living, and I ended up in the heart of the beast in a way, which is kind of hilarious because I know a lot now about branding and marketing and digital analytics and media and lead generation and prospecting and sales and brand marketing and demand generation and content marketing and authority marketing and persuasion psychology. And I didn't want to learn any of that stuff. I didn't care about any of it. And it's fascinating. And I had no idea that this was going to happen to me. So I'm thinking about the brand right now and the idea of brand marketing and the pitfalls around brand marketing because brand is so important. It's so important. And I was thinking, you know, when should I hire a branding expert? Because I've done that before and I've been in so many conversations with branding experts. One of my clients for my lead generation company was a company that did the Kashi brand. And when I saw what he did, and I was listening to Steven, who owns this company, guy by the name of Steven Addis, explain how he did it, I thought, this is so brilliant. I have to understand this. Because the idea of a platform, so if you get a kind bar, kind is like a bar. It's like kind cereal doesn't fit. It doesn't make sense. But Kashi can be anything. I mean, yeah, Kashi can be anything. Um, and that was the idea. Now, I don't want to talk about brand and philosophy and brand theory because I really don't care. I just want stuff to work. The only thing I care about is it works. I just want to get what I want. I want the business to work. I want my life to work. I want to like what I do. I don't really care about any of this stuff, all this marketing, lead generation, prospecting. And it's important because I'm not attached to any of the domains because I've been in all of them. So the debate between social media versus branding versus lead generation versus prospecting, inbound versus outbound, it's all sideways to me because I don't care. I'm not attached to any of it, any of it. However, to succeed on an ongoing basis in the face of massive change in technology in the society, I care a lot about. That's what I want. And that's what my experiments are all about. And they're experiments. And the minute I get attached to a method, I screw myself because then I'm just arguing with myself over the method and I'm not paying attention to all the opportunities and discarding the methods that no longer work, that used to. Now this is becoming important. So my particular brand of business development and approach is becoming really useful for me. And I think for others in the standpoint of we're in so much change right now that attaching to any approach is stupid for me, because if I do, the world will get away from me because I'll be doing LinkedIn social networking, for example, or outbound lead generation, for example, or Facebook ads, for example, or authority market branding, for example. In other words, I'll be doing a hammer or a screwdriver or a chainsaw or whatever, and something else will come along and I'll miss it. Or I'll attach myself to the debate over this or that. I did a post on LinkedIn, a poll on LinkedIn yesterday about finding your own way, really, is what it was really about. And I got people saying, well, you could do better on LinkedIn if you did this. And I'm like, oh my God, how do I communicate this? And I had one guy who gave a really long opinion about don't do this on LinkedIn and do this on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I've done all of it on LinkedIn. I don't care about the rules of LinkedIn. I couldn't care less. I just want to get the result. And part of the result for me includes not having to do things I don't want to do or be somebody I'm not. I don't want to be a copywriter. So I think one guy invited me to, he saw my post as a pain point because he's marketing to me to get and to come to his thing, that's going to teach me how to be more successful on LinkedIn. And I'm like, I spent 4 years consistently marketing on LinkedIn, and I tried all kinds of stuff. It's been a lot of fun. Some things worked, some things didn't work, but defining work became really important to me. So I got a $1.5 million business out of LinkedIn, but I didn't do it through posting content and authority marketing and branding and lead. All I did was I found CEOs of marketing agencies and I reached out to them. This was years ago. And I started building this company, not this one, but was called Call Sales Partners. It's my passive income company. And I did it through cold outreach on LinkedIn through the inbox. I wouldn't do that today because everyone's doing it. It's too late. That was a long time ago. Now it's just people are overwhelmed by all that spam. And now you have bots doing it with CPG chat and automation systems. And they didn't have all that when I did that years ago. So I would never do that. And then when the content marketers showed up, it was all about valuable content. And then that turned into content spam. It's content spam now. If CPG chat writes it and it's boring and nobody wants it, and you're using it just to get a lead, it's content spam. There's nothing wrong with that. If it works because that's what you want to do it. That's the point I'm making. I don't understand the debate. Why have a debate? To me, the debate is what's fun to do, what will work now, and what do I want to do, and for what purpose? And is this serving me well? This approach. Brand transcends this long term. However, the long game works for those with deep pockets. Brand is really, really hard. It's really hard. It takes a special kind of genius, or does it? So I had clients that did the branding for Kashi. I had a client that did the customer experience for Mini Cooper in the United States. They built the whole infrastructure for Mini Cooper's brand online, the experience, and integrated it with offline in the United States. And I spent years selling brands for companies like Reebok and GIS Inc. Huh? That's the point. That's the point. So my company made this company, GIS Inc., over $3 million in a few years off of an investment of, I don't know what they paid us, 100 grand a year, 130, 140 grand a year. That's a good return. And this company couldn't get leads. They had a really hard time. We fixed it. We didn't use any marketing, branding, content, none of it. None of it. We didn't do any of that stuff. That doesn't mean the brand doesn't work. It means that company, GIS Inc., was not well suited to construct an authority brand on social media. It would have been stupid for them to do that. However, they did do it with marketing on the side, and it was important to them as a long-term strategy. They needed business right away. We got them business right away. It depends. There's a lot of tools today. There's too many tools. Maybe that's the problem, is people can't get their head around it because there's too many tools. So they want to narrow themselves and pick a tool, or they're selling a hammer or a screwdriver and they want everybody to think this is the way. I see that a lot. There's a guy on YouTube, top guy on YouTube, Alaric Heck, I think his name is. He's probably one of the top media people on YouTube. And I talked to his company years ago. I'm like, how does this work and how much? I'm like, okay, if I can't spend 5 grand a month on doing this, it's not worth it. So it's never going to blow up for me. Now, for someone else who's a natural personality, maybe it would. But I'm looking at this, I'm like, this is going to be a 5-10 grand a month investment. And if I hire this company, it'll probably work over time. So he's talking about YouTube's better than Facebook for media. Well, because he does YouTube. Is it true? I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's his opinion. It's his opinion. It's an educated one. Why is he saying it? Because he doesn't want to do Facebook, probably. If Facebook worked for him, he'd say Facebook is better than YouTube. That's the whole point. And he would probably, smart guy. He didn't get there by accident. He's a smart guy. So he'd probably think, I'll just change it now. Well, that's going to be hard for his brand, because then people will be like, you're a lying asshole. So here's the point of the brand. It's got to be authentic. Now we're getting to what I really want to talk about. So the brand pathway is you Inc. I remember this from years ago. I was selling marketing communication services to big corporations, cold calling. I didn't know anybody. I had to cold call. I cold called in pharma. I cold called in consumer packaged goods marketing. I cold called B2B, like big time, like Accenture and Deloitte and these big. The company had to do at least $2 billion in revenue in the division to afford the services I was selling, and they all had a vendor because that's where the money is. And I got to get in there, and I'm some dumbass kid, and I don't know what I'm doing. I have to figure out how to get in there, keep my job. It's a draw against commission. So I had to pay my own way, and I did. But it took a while. The company I worked for didn't have a brand. Neither one of them. I worked for 2 companies in that industry way back then. Neither one of them, nobody ever heard of them, but they were good, really good. And my mentor at the time, who helped me get into the industry, said, work for a good company. Make sure you pick one. And he's helping me. He's like, they're good at what they do, really good. And they were. So when I got into Eli Lilly, the company that I work for had no pharma experience, but I got in and closed the deal. And the same with when I got him into Household Financial, closed the deal because these guys were good. They did big projects for known brands and entities. And by association, I had that creative chops, not me, them, to offer. But it still didn't matter because there's a million people doing the same stuff who are also just as good. See, you're starting to get this a little, hopefully. So the brand is the unique combination of things. I was now part of the brand. So they had what was called a sizzle reel or a demo reel of their work. And it was they worked for the CMO of McDonald's. They did McDonald's special marketing summit meeting. So working with the CMO of McDonald's, you better be a good marketer and communicator. And they were the best. So McDonald's hired them over and over again because they were good. And then they did all the work for Days Inn and these big hotel chains. But so did a lot of other people. So it was crowded. That's why they hired me, some kid, to go get them business, because it's crowded. They had reputations. I became part of the brand. What was my brand? My brand was, I'm going to sit in a room with you and I'm going to help figure out how to apply this for you. So I became part of the brand. This is confusing, but I want to make it as simple as possible. The product is you Inc. So my boss back in the day, the second company I was at they did Gatorade's national convention. Michael Jordan was there, and on stage. So, and the company I worked for told Michael what to do. Not really, but created the creative environment and all the media for Gatorade. Worked for the CMO of Gatorade. That was huge back then. So I'm out selling this stuff and nobody cares because all the people at that level in these corporations, they have a Rolodex of 10 companies that do that, 15, 20, 100. Nobody had heard of the company I work for, but they knew the work because they're in the industry. So if you're a CMO of a big corporation or doing B2B marketing for Accenture or whatever, you know kind of what's good and what sucks. And the product was good, but why this one? Why me? And it was really hard because I didn't know anybody. I didn't have a Rolodex. I didn't have relationships. How do you do it off cold calls? You do it with your own you Inc. approach. I became unique. I found things that interested me. Now, the people I work for didn't always like it because they're like, oh no, Larry's back with some crazy thing we're going to have to figure out. And I created a lot of work for the creative department because they wanted a cookie cutter thing sometimes just to make their life easier. And I'm coming in with stuff from companies like Baxter and a tech company called Comdisco and all these companies that is crazy stuff. And I didn't know what I was doing. I was just trying to like make a living. And I didn't care either. I just wanted it to work. And it was exhausting doing all these cold calls. You Inc. means it's all intangible. It's in the mind of the buyer. And this is what my boss at the time taught me. He said, you're selling, he called it mumbly dust. In other words, it doesn't exist. So whatever you show up with, and this is true even with tangible stuff, whatever you show up with, whether you're a marketing coach, a branding coach, a lead generation consultant, a software developer with a company, it doesn't matter. A plumber, what that is means different things to every single person on the planet. There's a billion different variations of what you do because what you do is in their mind. It's their perception of you. You have a choice. You can pander to that and be an opportunist and figure out how to get them to do what you want. That's marketing. Or you can figure out who you are, who you want to be with, what resonates with you, and figure out how to connect that into the marketplace where you want to be on your own terms, communicate it clearly, and do whatever it takes to get visible in the right places on your own terms, not doing things you don't want to do and only doing things you do want to do. Those are the poles. And I think most people are somewhere in between. I'm all the way over on the I'm not compromising anything pole, but I'm not saying everyone else has to. I'm just saying that's where I got because I've been doing this my entire life. So I don't expect everyone else to get there overnight or ever. You're not going to want to go as far as I did probably. But if you're on the pole of pure opportunist, where you're in the market and you're saying, here's where the opportunity is for me, and I'm going to use whatever means necessary to get them to do what I want, you better be a really good marketer, really good, because you're not connecting with anybody. You're going to have to fool them into trusting you. That's the game. That's the marketing game. I worked for a marketing analytics company years ago, and it was not a good experience. I was with these guys for 6 months, helping them build out the business, and they failed. And they blamed me, but it was their fault, I'm afraid, because I actually did a good job for them. They just didn't know it. I closed a deal, which was a miracle for these guys. It's a miracle that they lasted 6 months, to be honest, because they really didn't know what they were doing. And if you're going to hire somebody, to be your head of sales or build it out, you got to know what you're doing first. Like have some idea of what your company's supposed to be or what you want it to be at least, or be flexible in the process of iterative discovery, which is how I do it. That's business development, creative business development. So with them, it was like, what do you do? And they told me the stuff they did. Like, well, we do marketing analytics and we do segment analysis and we do modeling. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I didn't say it like that, but that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. So I got educated on that industry, the data, direct response. Well, it's not direct response marketing. It's more database marketing. So it's about really understanding avatars, personas, profiles, segments. There's a lot of data analysis in it, looking at customer data, modeling that data, propensity to buy, propensity to what they call attrite, which is a fancy word for go away, and then figuring out how all the products, the communications, the marketing can connect to the ideal client at the lowest possible media spend. So there's more to it, but basically what they were doing was very simply described by finally the founder of this company, where I got him to do a persona exercise with a friend of theirs actually. And we sat in a room and I'm watching, I'm trying to figure out, what do these guys actually do? Because they don't know. That's the problem. Because what you do comes from the market and you intersecting. They couldn't understand that because they were so self-absorbed. That's their problem. That's why they failed, because they're self-absorbed, I think. Maybe something else. So what happened was, he said, we lie to people. And I was like, that's exactly what you do. And I got it. I got it. I was there. And I realized, oh, what do? They help companies lie to people so they get more clients. And they use data to do it. Well, I can't say that. So I've got to figure out how to say that in a way that doesn't upset everyone, because they're doing it too. And nobody wants to be a liar. But that's what they were doing. So I'm like, okay. So I went to a conference. I started going to conferences for these guys. So I went to all these conferences in the for-profit education industry. It's called private sector education now. It's really for-profit education, but they like to call it private sector education. And then there's another education industry, which is not-for-profit education, which is like a hilarious joke. And I went to their National Association of Admissions Enrollment Counselor meetings. Like every single college, university in the country was there as my market that I was going after. And then I went to this industry conference hosted by a market leader that did exactly the same thing as the company I worked for. I went to their conference and networked through all their clients and prospective clients in enemy territory without a brand. So Staymates, the name of that company, they had a big brand, and I had Marketing IQ, which is a great name, great brand name, but no one had heard of it. But they liked the name. So I'd say, I'm with Marketing IQ. And they'd be like, yeah, that sounds cool. I've heard of that. They never heard of it. But Marketing IQ sounds like you've heard of it. So it was a great, brilliant, it wasn't my idea. It was the guys who founded it. They were very smart and good at marketing, lying to people. So they said, what do you do? And I said, we make sure that all the stuff you're doing works. Like, it's complicated. You got all these customers and products and markets and everything. And it's like, you got to figure out how to get them to do what you want. And they're like, oh, that's great. And I crashed parties. I went to one party where it was like one woman called, she's like, wait a minute, what are you doing here? The booths are tomorrow. And I'm like, oh, shit. Because I just walked in. It was the night before. It was the cocktail party for all the owners of these private sector for-profit colleges around the United States were in there. So I'm like, shit, I'm going to the party. So I'm having drinks with all these people, and they're like, what do you do? And I'm like, well, it's really all about, with colleges today, it's like you really got to get these consumers to understand it and buy, and you need a lot of customers. So I'm really involved in that. I work for this company called Marketing IQ. And they're like, wow, that's great. Tell me about it. Well, I'm supposed to be in there doing that. I'm supposed to be selling them on the floor of the trade show the next day. I did that too. And I got a 20 grand, $25,000 deal out of this. I think it was 25,000 from a college in Santa Barbara, junior college. And it was because the guy was like, yeah, I got a real problem right now. And I was like, what is it? And he said, well, the demographics of our market are changing and we haven't changed. And I said, oh, we need to talk. See, I got there. It resonated with him, and he was thoughtful. So we sat down and we started talking about it. And he said, California's not the same as when they founded this place. I was like, no kidding. Most of them speak Spanish. He says, a lot of my customers speak Spanish. It's a junior college. It's a junior college in Southern California. He says, we have to retool our curriculum, and we're doing it. So it was a really good institution. A lot of junior colleges are very smart because they've got to be. And they don't have they have a brand, but it's not like Stanford where you can do whatever you want, So they had to get it right. And they get state money. So you really have to get it right, because they probably have regulators and people coming in and saying, are you serving our interests? Because we're paying for this too. The state cares. Um, so they're trying to figure out how to do this. The guys I work for could help them. They could. So yes, they can. So they manipulate people, but they can also help. So you have a choice. Which way do you want to go with your brand? You want to divide? That's the marketing route of I can get people to do what I want, or you want to connect. These are the key choices. You Inc. is you. You Inc. is me. Me Inc. What do I want to do? I want to connect. I don't want to divide. It's too hard. I'm not good at it. I don't like it. It's not fun. The other problem is it's temporary because if I'm dividing, I have to keep fighting for those customers all the time. If I'm connecting, I feel like I'll have them forever and their friends will come too. So the connecting is a lot easier. So with this guy in particular, the whole idea was how can we get smarter about the community we're trying to serve? And I was like, we can do that. And they could. Now, if I was working for two open-minded, heart-centered people, that company would have been something. They'd probably be, I bet that company could have gotten to 3, 4, 5 million. And I could have gotten them there in about 3 years if they partnered with me. You see the point? I couldn't do this myself, and neither could they. They treated me like a hired gun. Go out, get us leads, get us deals, and then go away because it's our company. And I thought I was going to be a partner. So when we mapped it out, he showed me the org chart and it was him and these 4 or 5 partners and then me over in the corner getting them leads. And I'm like, I'm not doing that. I'm not, why would I do that? I want to be a partner. I'm smart as you. I'm just not good at data and analytics, but I'm great at what I do. They couldn't see it because they saw me as the future for them. They were afraid. Now I'm going to get to the real key of this with branding here is, so the issue is the brand marketing pitfalls or fear. So the issue is, are you afraid or are you prosperous? Prosperity is a feeling. So if I'm in a marketplace and I'm looking around and noticing what I want to be in that marketplace, I'm going in the right direction. So I call this approach more money now, which is not chasing clients. The opposite is fear-based, which is I'm in the marketplace trying to figure out how to get what I want from it because I'm afraid I won't have enough money. And that's where they were coming from. I was too, though, but I was able to transcend that more. It's sometimes, whereas they were not able to transcend that at all and blamed me, I would say, for the feeling of that. Whereas I blamed them for being assholes, which they were. But they were afraid. So what was making them act the way they were acting was fear. And I get it because it's terrifying. I could tolerate the uncertainty of being self-employed and an entrepreneur because I'd done it for so long, and they couldn't. And that gets to this idea of brand as well, which is you got to know yourself. So if you're doing this and you're out here on your own, you got to deal with the fear of not succeeding. You got to deal with the fear of how am I going to make rent next month? How am I going to make? We used to call it payroll. You know, my thing in my 20s was I got to make payroll. You know, I got people. You know, I got to pay them. You can't not make payroll. They'll quit, and then you got to do all the work yourself. That sucks. So let me go back to this. So brand marketing pitfalls. Why should I hire a branding expert? You got to be your own expert and then hire someone who's a communications expert to help construct your brand if you can afford it. But the good ones are big money. And it's worth it if you know yourself. But if you hire somebody like that to solve your problem, it's going to fail because they can't do it. They want you to tell them who you are. The good ones know it's about who you are. If you don't know what that is, they can't do their job. And then they have to become coaches, like therapists or something. Now, I had a friend, he had a brand coaching a company called Brand Therapy. I had a client, this woman, brilliant people, Nancy Lerner. She owned a company called Otherwise. And she said the biggest issue with branding was they didn't know what they wanted. They didn't know who they were. And she had to work them through that. These things intersect. The personal and the business and the brand intersect. You got to understand that. You have to take the pressure off the marketing stuff and put the pressure on yourself to figure out who you are and what your brand is, or it's gonna be a mess out in the marketplace. You're gonna sound like a CPG chatbot, like everybody else. Um, the long game works for those with deep pockets. I think you got to do both. I think you construct your brand, but you also got to know how to get people in the door. People call that lead generation, networking, sales, or whatever. I really just think of it now as finding people that I want to be with and who resonate with me, where we resonate with each other and we can create shared desire together. That's important. I've had clients that did the branding for Kashi, selling brands for. So GIS Inc. branding wouldn't work for them. Is short term, meaning 3 years. You know, they already had a brand. Everyone knew who they were. They didn't need it to be fancy or it's like data. They're experts in a company called Esri, which is a mapping software company. They're experts in it. It's super complicated. Local governments need maps. Well, they need more than maps. And this company was on the cutting edge of anything that Esri did. And they were partners. They were really good. That's what the brand was. They didn't need to do much more than that. What they needed was somebody knocking on the doors and knowing what to do and integrating with their experts inside the company that didn't like doing that. And that's what we did. And it worked. 3 million bucks. And then if you've got a brand, Kashi, Mini, Reebok, or whatever, you can afford a brand agency. This is huge money. That's my point. Content branding and social media aren't necessary, or they are necessary if you want to do it. So don't get hung up in the hammer. So forget about what's in the toolbox. Just know there's a lot in the toolbox and think about what you want and what you don't, what you're not willing to do and what you are willing to do. Because if you go down that social media route, I see this all the time. People are like, well, I'm going to start doing YouTube. And I'm like, you know how hard that is? You better be serious about that. And it's going to take you a long time. Alex Hormozy blew up on YouTube because he hired Evan Carmichael. And that's nothing against Alex. He's a great guy. It worked because he paid Evan Carmichael to help him figure it out. And he says this is really hard. That's why when he structured his program, he's showing people different pieces of it. So understand how it works. In other words, what's in the toolbox, and then figure out which tools work for you and how to apply them for you, depending on where you are, who you are, what your market is, and what you're trying to do. Are you just trying to extract money from the market, manipulate people? Okay. Or are you trying to create something more meaningful, enjoyable, with purpose for yourself on your own terms so you don't have to do stuff you don't want to do? Be in those poles, know what they are, flow back and forth. You got to figure yourself out. I'll share how to figure out for your brand the right path forward. Well, I don't have time to do that, but you can see some of my stuff. So if you want to know how to find your own path forward, go to the content page. So if you go to content, I got plenty of content. And if you go down to More Money Now, that's the starting point. So the starting point of More Money Now is figuring out the product. It's step one. I got a video. Watch the video and start doing it. And I think you'll be a lot happier. All right, I'm gonna take a few minutes here. And so we were talking about market authority today in the More Money Now meeting a bit. Normally we talk about, it's more of a group session where we're talking about working through the tree of product, connect, ask, schmooze, and next, and where we're at with it. And everyone has their own perspective. But we were talking about market authority and the challenges. And I think when you have something new to say to the society, it's got to be really structured. The challenge is if you're going to make an art movie selling something artsy, your audience will potentially be 15 people, 100, or maybe 5,000, but it's not going to be very big. And the reason is most people in our society don't think in an unstructured way. They really need a lot of of organization to understand something, and to put it in a format linearly that is easily digestible becomes absolutely critical when what you're presenting is going to be extremely difficult for somebody to understand until they've absorbed it for a while. And this is the entrepreneur challenge. And it's one of my biggest challenges in the people in my group, because we're doing things that are new and they are going to project onto you that you are in a box, because their mind wants to put something in a box and it's trying to figure out, what is this? And it's not going to be able to figure out what it is because it's new. Now, nothing's brand new. Everything cycles back around. But when you, so in marketing, they call this problem unaware. So the idea of problem unaware just means that people have their belief systems about the kind of things you are talking about based on the words you use. So you say a word and that triggers an association in their mind about what that means. And it's not what you meant, but it's what they think you meant. So the way to overcome unstructured, because that's what life really is. So the structure is not really true. It's what people need to understand things. Now I'm getting mystical on purpose. So the unstructured, the flowing energetic truth that is inside you and everywhere in the world comes out into the world in the form of whatever is understandable for the person who needs that most through you. And your ability to channel that, hone it, refine it, and make it suit your purposes is what will make you a market authority over time. And the ability to do that comes from becoming hyper aware of the intersection of yourself and your market and how these things come together. This is really, really difficult and very, very advanced. For people who are figuring it out, don't want it to be too complicated or want things to be very structured, the challenge with innovation is avoiding a how-to method that's going to fail. And I think software developers have always run into these problems. So I use Go High Level. We use Go High Level and Notion because they're the best tools on the market right now for open creation. They can do everything, but it's really hard because they're unstructured. So what happens is you can create a mess on top of it. So the company I bought it through created a mess on top of Go High Level, and I was kind of an asshole about it because I was so frustrated, but I broke my contract with them because they created so much complexity on top of a perfect system, a good infrastructure, that my assistant couldn't get the work done. And it wasn't her fault. It was built wrong. So we went to a different company. This guy, Joe Affelbaum, who's a genius, by the way, and you should work with him, is allowed us access to his Go High Level instance. And it's beautiful because he's structured it so well, so we can build on top of it. But it's really hard to do. It takes longer, but it was worth it. Now, we could have bought a canned approach. So I've seen this a lot. So years ago, with my other company, we were looking for software and we went with a company called Close. We were looking at Close or Outreach.com, and we picked Close because they had an agency model, which worked perfectly for us, and Outreach didn't. But Outreach was a better system for us at the time because it was so unstructured and they had so much understanding in it of the market. They buried a lot of market lead generation data and prospecting data into their system. It was extraordinary what Outreach had done. Close was a good company, but it was very difficult to work in their system. They were narrow in their thinking and looked at the world in terms of outbound versus inbound and lead generation versus emailing and calling versus email. It wasn't integrated, but it was structured. the software was structured. So it was a massive project for us, and it took like a year, I think. Now it's great, and we're still using that. Not my company. It's called OpGen now. It used to be called Call Sales Partners, but we're still using it. That partnership goes way back from when Close was in early days. Great company, great people, works really well. Now it's like nailed it, and it turned out to be the better choice for us than Outreach. But at the time, Outreach didn't have the right business model. It was too hard to figure it out. No, it wasn't too hard to figure it out. It was the business model. That's right. Close was hard to figure out and get it to work for our specifications because it was so structured. If it was unstructured, it also would have been hard, but in a different way, because then you got to have somebody who's an expert in it. Well, we become experts in things. I've always done it that way because I'm an entrepreneur and I don't have a big budget. Or usually no budget, I'm just doing it and figuring it out and then going, and the snowball starts rolling. The point of that story about structure and unstructure is that people don't like unstructured. Entrepreneurs can handle it. People who can tolerate what's new love unstructured. I love unstructured. I want to create structure in it. Create. Most people aren't creative. They don't want to do that. They want it to be packaged. They want it to be easy. The problem with packaged and easy and how-to steps is they're not always going to work because you're copying somebody else's stuff. So it's not structured for you. They structured it for you because they want you to buy it. So they're trying to make it easier and simpler so you could do it. But then if you're doing it, you're just copying what they want you to do. And if they sell a lot of it, everyone else is doing the same thing. This is the problem with the how-to programs for marketers, because they know what they did to succeed is really complicated because it's them. They created it in an unstructured world through creativity and in creative energy and going through the trials and the challenges of being an entrepreneur. And then they got big and maybe they're selling, here's how to do what I did. And the answer is simplify it, structure it, put a lot of forms around it, 5 steps to this, 7 steps to that, magic doohickey over here, package it, market it, sell it so people can consume it, buy it simply and understand it. The problem is the results suck because you're copying. Now, it can work early days because if you get something early, it's new. So not enough people have done it yet. The problem is when you're in SQL 15, so you're 5 years in, and that thing that worked 5 years before is done. It's over. We're on to something else. Or there's a new iteration of it, the new thing. Well, that's got to come from you, not them. Iteration 2.0, they're working on. Don't let that trickle down to you. Don't buy their 2.0. Create your own 2.0. That's hard for people that aren't creative or are real entrepreneurs in their thinking processes. So this is your dilemma. So if you're in a baked system, like an affiliate network, a franchise organization, or your ClickFunnels affiliate, or any of these things, your Shopify, you got to bring your own creative energy into that structure. So use the structure, that's fine, but don't copy anybody else in the structure. Just do the best you can with it, but become original and wrap your originality around what they gave you if you need some structure to succeed and work for yourself. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. I got a couple more minutes. So I'll give you an example, Fast Signs. So I almost bought a Fast Signs years ago, and it's a very good company for franchises because their margins are good. And I didn't do it because I don't want to own a Fast Signs. I'm like, what am I thinking? Why would I do this? I don't want to be the sign guy. It would be horrible. I wanted security because I had so much insecurity, right? No structure. And I was like, oh my God, I'm exhausted. I need some security. So I started looking at franchises because it's like, oh, at least maybe I can get a stable income going here without it being too much of a nightmare. So I looked at tons of franchises, so many franchises, because franchises are easier. The franchise people are out there everywhere, and I was networking a ton. So everywhere I went, someone was selling franchises, franchise brokers, they're called. So I went out to Fast Signs and I looked at Signorama and Fast Signs, and there's a million sign companies. And I looked at the different models, and Fast Signs was really good. And then I realized I don't want a Fast Signs. So, but what's the point? I started talking to local Fast Signs groups, and they're all told me and they're giving me all this information. And they said, there's this guy, I think it was Northbrook. I was living in the city of Chicago at the time. Northbrook's a suburb north. And it was like, he makes more money than all of us, and his location is horrible and it's really tiny. You should go talk to him. He wouldn't talk to me. He's like, too busy. And I'm like, this is interesting. What's this guy doing? Well, you know what he did? He realized what that business is. It's all operations and process. He didn't care about the branding. He didn't care if the location was clean. He didn't care if it felt good. He didn't care. All he cared about was the efficiency and the money, the margin. He looked at the margin. That's why he did so well. He was a absolute maniacal operations person. And I remember the Sinorama guy not Sinorama, it was another one, Signs for Hire. I talked to a whole bunch of them. I was like, what is the key skill in this industry? And he says, process. And I'm like, I'm out. I don't think he realized. He's like, well, this guy's going to be God. That's the worst thing for me. The key skill is process. This guy was a process genius. So, the franchisor doesn't care about that because they don't care about the profits of the franchisees. They say they do, but they really don't. They make their money selling shit to the franchisees. And then some of them get an override from the sales. But McDonald's makes its money selling equipment to operators, owner operators. The brand supports the retailer. State Farm has agents, so they don't have to do the paperwork. The sales deal with the customers. Well, now they do because of the internet. But back when that started, that was what that was about. Let's put it in your neighborhood and not pay for it. State Farm's like, we can't build out all those little State Farm offices. Let's have somebody else pay for it. And we'll give them a piece, right? That's how they did it. It's very complex. Like there's a lot of models in those industries, the affiliate industry, the franchise, they're all the same. If you really think about it, it really is all the same. So if you want to fit into it, in other words, we're talking about structure and unstructure here. An entrepreneur is no structure. You create the structure because you're a creative energy person. You're making it happen. An employee is all structure. They're giving you a check. I call that the matrix. You're in the matrix. In between is all this other stuff. You're an affiliate, you're an owner operator, you're a licensee, you're a franchisee, or whatever. If you're going to succeed there, there's got to be something original in it. There's got to be. Now, if you're an entrepreneur, but you're really not, you're more like a coach or a service provider because you're good at something or you like helping people, and you try to become a marketer, it's going to be a bitch. Because you're going to have to keep doing that, or you try to become a prospector or a networker like I did, it's going to be a bitch because you're going to have to keep doing it. Or you're going to become a lead generation or a social seller or a social media influencer. It's going to be a bitch for you because you're going to have to keep doing it. So you got to think really hard about the structure you want to put into your coaching or service provider business, and that comes from understanding yourself. And it's like, do I like going to networking events? Do I like going to networking events with other people looking for clients? You ever notice in a lot of these networking events, every single person there talking about their elevator message? I remember that from a long time ago. Everybody, and they clap. Someone would come. I was at Marketing Executives Networking Group years ago. I'm not a marketing executive, but they let me in. I was looking for CMO clients. That's the point. They let me in. They shouldn't have let me in. I'm just there for clients. So, there's smart people, right? MBAs from Kellogg, and some of them were CMOs actually. But now there were coaches or consultants because the CMOs were not going to these meetings. They were running away from these meetings. And anyone with a Rolodex into a CMO, VP of marketing from their career was not giving it out except to their best friends. This is how this works. So we're talking about our elevator messages all the time. to sell each other. So this one guy stands up. He says, "I'm the chief ignition officer." And all the marketers applauded, like, awesome elevator message. And it was in a room of other people looking for clients. All right, it's hilarious. So the networking can work because you get into other people's networks, you meet the right people and all this, but do you like doing that? Is it what you love? You want to be there? And is it working for your business? And if both of those things are yes, go to more free networking events. It's great. If it's working for you. If you're like, "Oh my god, it's another one of these," stop going. There's other ways. Or if you're going and you're like, "Boy, was that fun," and you get to see all your people and everything, and then you leave and you're like, "Well, my elevator message is getting better, or my funnel's getting better, or my challenges are working better," or whatever, and you still hate your business, your coaching or service provider business, you need to stop going. It's not working. So that's the idea of you Inc. and figuring out what your brand is. It's figure out who you are, what you want to be in the world, and do it on your own terms. And if structure's hard, put some structure around it, but make sure it's not somebody else's where they're going to screw you with their version of a hammer that's pounding your nail, frankly, into the wall. And they may have really good intentions, but you know, intentions don't matter. It's important, but what really matters is impact. And if it's a negative impact on you, you need to get away from that group.